Have you ever looked at your life and felt like somewhere along the way you quietly lost the real you? Not suddenly, not dramatically, just slowly fading under responsibilities, expectations, and the constant pressure to stay strong. And in that quiet fading, your heart whispered for help, but the world around you never slowed down long enough to listen. In this audiobook, we will explore 10 chapters that will help you find clarity, reconnect with your inner self, dissolve emotional fog, and build a mindset strong enough to carry you through every season of life. Chapter 1: Rediscovering Your Inner Soil. Before you rebuild anything in your life, you have to understand the foundation you are standing on. Many people don't realize that their current mindset is shaped by years of unprocessed emotions, quiet disappointments, memories they never revisited, and beliefs they absorbed without questioning. You can't grow with force when the ground beneath you is tangled. You grow with awareness. So take a slow breath and step inward. Not to judge yourself, not to fix everything at once, but simply to meet the parts of you that have been waiting. Sometimes the reason you feel lost is because you've lived too long carrying versions of yourself that no longer fit who you're becoming. This chapter is your invitation to let those old versions speak. Begin by noticing your patterns, the way small problems drain you more than they should, the way you avoid certain conversations because they remind you of past hurt, the way you stay busy so you don't have to face the silence inside. These patterns aren't failures, they're signals. They're tiny doorways pointing toward what needs understanding, not suppression. Imagine your inner world as a landscape shaped by every experience you've lived through. Some areas are peaceful, some heavy, some untouched. When you walk through this landscape with honesty, you start seeing the roots behind your thoughts. You understand why you react the way you do, why certain days feel heavier, why some memories still echo quietly in the background. And once you understand the root, change becomes gentle instead of overwhelming. The journey of rediscovery isn't about forcing yourself to feel positive. It's about allowing yourself to feel real. When you accept your truth without resistance, something shifts. Your mind stops fighting itself. Your heart stops hiding. And the person you thought was lost begins to return, slowly, softly, naturally. You are not here to create a new identity. You are here to uncover the one that has always been buried beneath layers of noise and expectation. That rediscovery is the first step toward a stronger mindset, because strength built on self-understanding never collapses. This chapter reminds you that clarity isn't found in rushing, it's found in noticing. And today, you've noticed yourself again. As you continue walking through the landscape of your inner world, you'll notice something important. Not every difficult feeling needs to be solved. Some feelings simply need to be heard. People often rush into fixing themselves, believing healing is a race, but awareness is not about speed. It's about depth. When you allow your emotions to exist without labeling them as weakness, they reveal a clarity you didn't know you were missing. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is pause and ask yourself one gentle question: what am I really carrying? You might discover that what feels heavy today is not today's weight at all. It might be old disappointment buried under new responsibilities. It might be a small heartbreak that you never gave language to. It might be fear disguised as anger, or exhaustion disguised as silence. When you understand the true shape of your burden, it becomes easier to breathe again. There's a quiet strength that appears when you stop pretending to be unaffected. You are human, and every human carries a private world inside, messy, beautiful, complicated, and deeply meaningful. The key is not to hide it from yourself. When you turn inward with honesty, You create space for emotional truth, and truth is the foundation of every strong mindset. Start noticing your internal conversations. The tone you use when you speak to yourself matters far more than the words others say to you. If your inner voice is harsh, critical, or impatient, your energy collapses before any challenge even begins. But when your inner voice becomes patient, understanding, and gentle, even with your flaws, you unlock a different kind of power. A power that doesn't shout, but guides. Think about how often you judge yourself for simply being tired, overwhelmed, or unsure. But what if these states aren't signs of weakness? What if they are your system asking for care? The moment you treat your emotions like messages instead of problems, you begin healing on a level deeper than motivation can reach. Now imagine your inner soil again, that quiet ground inside you. With every moment of awareness, you're clearing a small patch of space. You're removing old stones of guilt, brushing away the dust of years you survived without acknowledgement, and allowing fresh air to touch the surface. Growth doesn't begin with action. It begins with space. Space to feel, to breathe, to understand. As this chapter closes, remember one truth. Rediscovery is not an achievement. It's a relationship with yourself. Some days it will feel natural, some days confusing, and some days you'll take a step forward only to return to the same old emotions. That's normal. Real journeys are never straight lines. But you are here, listening, noticing, understanding. And that means you're already growing in ways you can't fully see yet. Chapter 2. Understanding the weight you don't talk about. There are moments in life when you feel a heaviness you can't explain. Not the kind that makes you cry, but the kind that makes you quiet. A weight that sits somewhere between your chest and your thoughts, shaping your mood without saying a single word. This is the weight you rarely talk about. Not because you want to hide it, but because you don't know where to start. And this chapter is where you finally begin to understand it. Every hidden weight has a story. Some come from responsibilities you were never ready for, but accepted anyway. Some are born from relationships where you gave more than you received. Some are shaped by unspoken expectations, where you kept trying to be enough but never felt seen. And some come from the silent battles you fought alone because you didn't want to be a burden to anyone else. These weights accumulate quietly, forming layers around your heart until even simple days feel heavier than they should. Notice how often you tell yourself, "I'm fine," even when something inside you tightens. Notice how many times you push through exhaustion because slowing down feels like a luxury. Notice how you convince yourself that you don't need help, even while carrying more than you've ever carried before. These moments reveal the emotional burdens that live beneath your routines. Sometimes the weight isn't just emotional, it's the pressure to appear strong. You've trained yourself to smile through stress, stay calm through chaos, and keep moving even when your energy runs thin. You became the person others rely on, but somewhere in the process, you forgot that you too deserve a place to fall apart. You deserve softness. You deserve space. Take a moment to ask yourself honestly, when was the last time I listened to what I truly feel? Not what you should feel, not what you pretend to feel, but what you actually feel. You may discover that beneath your strength there is a quiet exhaustion waiting to be acknowledged. The type of exhaustion that doesn't go away with sleep, but only with emotional honesty. There's nothing weak about carrying weight. What hurts you is carrying it without awareness, because when you don't understand your burden, you start believing that you are the burden, and that belief slowly eats away at your confidence, your peace, and your sense of self. As you breathe through this chapter, remind yourself that naming your struggles is not complaining, it's clarity, and clarity gives you back control. When you recognize what has been silently shaping your emotions, the weight begins to shift. Not by disappearing all at once, but by becoming something you can finally hold with intention instead of fear. This chapter opens the door to acknowledging what your heart has been whispering for years. You've been strong for too long without support, and now it's time to learn the strength that comes from understanding, not suppressing. As you look deeper into the weight you don't talk about, you begin to see that many of your struggles are not weaknesses. They are reminders of how much you've carried without falling. Strength isn't always loud. Most of the time, it's the quiet ability to keep moving when your heart feels heavy, to show up when your mind is tired, and to hope even after life has tested you again and again. But even strong people need moments where they sit with themselves and acknowledge what they truly feel. Think about the responsibilities you carry. Some were chosen, others placed on your shoulders without permission. Maybe you became the calm one in every crisis, the person others depend on even when you're drained. Maybe you became the listener for everyone else's pain while your own stayed unspoken. Over time, this creates a quiet imbalance, one where you give so much of yourself that you forget you have limits too. This is the invisible burden, the pressure to always hold things together, the fear of disappointing people, the guilt of saying no, the exhaustion of being reliable even on the days when you're breaking inside. These patterns don't just drain your energy, they shape your thoughts, your reactions, and the way you protect your heart. Understanding this weight won't erase it instantly, but it stops you from blaming yourself for emotions that were never weakness. You also carry the armor you built while surviving difficult seasons. You learn to stay composed because falling apart didn't seem like an option. You learn to stay silent because your pain felt too heavy to share. You learn to appear strong because the people around you needed stability. But these survival habits slowly turn into walls, and even when life becomes gentler, your heart still struggles to open. Ask yourself softly, what part of this weight truly belongs to me, and what part did I accept because I didn't want others to suffer? You'll realize not everything you carry is yours. Some burdens were inherited, some were absorbed from others' expectations. Some are memories that still echo even though the moments have passed. Awareness is the beginning of healing. When you name your hidden burdens, they lose the power to control you from the background. When you understand your emotional patterns, you stop viewing yourself as damaged and start recognizing your resilience. You see that the weight didn't break you. It shaped you into someone who knows how to endure. But endurance doesn't mean you have to carry everything forever. Real strength includes rest. It includes releasing what no longer belongs to you. It includes giving yourself the same care you once gave everyone else. As this chapter closes, remember, you are not defined by the heaviness you hold, but by the courage to finally understand it. Chapter 3. Healing the patterns that hold you back. Every human carries patterns, subtle, repetitive responses that shape how you think, behave, and feel. Some of these patterns protect you, but others quietly limit your growth. They make you doubt yourself even when you are capable. They keep you silent even when you have something to say. They make you walk away from opportunities because a small part of you still believes you're not ready. And the truth is, these patterns didn't appear overnight. They were formed through experiences you never fully processed. Think about how you respond when you feel hurt. Do you shut down? Do you pretend everything is fine? Do you distract yourself until the feeling fades? These reactions come from the stories your mind created to keep you safe. Maybe you learned early in life that expressing emotions led to conflict, so you stayed quiet. Maybe you learned that asking for help made you feel weak, so you carried everything alone. Maybe you learned that being strong was the only way to be loved, so you hid every fragile part of yourself. These patterns feel natural because you've practiced them for years. But here's the truth you often forget. The patterns that once protected you may now be the same patterns holding you back. You're no longer the person who needed them. Life has changed and you've grown, but the mind doesn't update itself automatically. It repeats what it knows until you gently interrupt it. Start noticing your automatic reactions, the tension in your shoulders when someone raises their voice, the way you rehearse conversations in your head before speaking, the way you prepare for disappointment even when nothing is wrong. These reactions are not random. They are your emotional history replaying itself. And healing begins when you stop moving on autopilot and start responding with intention. Ask yourself, is this reaction coming from my present self or from a past version of me that was afraid? You'll be surprised by how often your present is shaped by old fears, but you don't have to fight these patterns. You simply have to understand them. When you approach them with kindness instead of judgment, they soften. They loosen their grip. They make space for new responses. Imagine gently placing your hand on your own heart and telling yourself, it's safe now. Safe to express, safe to rest, safe to release, safe to learn a new way of thinking. This is how healing begins, not through force, but through reassurance. Your mind unlearns the past when it finally feels supported. You don't need to change everything at once. You only need to recognize one pattern at a time. Each moment of awareness is a small act of healing. Each honest reflection is a step toward freedom. And slowly, without pressure, you begin to see that the patterns controlling your life were never permanent. They were simply unexamined. Now you're finally examining them, and that changes everything. As you continue exploring the patterns that hold you back, you start seeing that most of them were never flaws. They were survival strategies. You reacted the way you needed to in moments that felt overwhelming or unsafe. But now, those same strategies appear even when you don't need protection anymore, creating emotional walls instead of emotional comfort. Healing isn't about blaming yourself. It's about finally understanding why these patterns existed. Think about the fear of disappointing others. You say yes when your heart wants to say no. You take on responsibilities that drain you because you don't want anyone to feel let down. This usually forms when approval was tied to performance, when being helpful or strong earned you acceptance. But as an adult, this becomes self-neglect. You keep giving pieces of yourself away and still wonder why you feel unseen. There's also the fear of vulnerability. You hide emotions not because you lack depth, but because you learned early that opening up could lead to hurt or judgment. So you stay guarded, even with people who care. This keeps you safe, but it also keeps you lonely. Healing begins when you allow small moments of softness without expecting pain to follow. Another pattern is expecting failure before trying. This comes from times when effort didn't bring results or trust didn't bring safety. Your mind started preparing for disappointment early, hoping it would lessen the pain. But this pattern quietly limits your courage. It stops you from stepping into opportunities meant for you. The fear feels real, but it comes from memories, not from your current reality. Ask yourself softly, is this pattern keeping me safe or keeping me small? That question creates a shift inside you, because once you see the difference, you begin choosing differently. You respond with awareness instead of fear. You break cycles you once thought were permanent. Healing doesn't happen through huge decisions. It happens in subtle moments. When you pause before reacting, when you say no without guilt, when you rest without earning it, when you speak your truth without shrinking yourself. Each of these moments rewires your inner world, teaching your mind that safety can exist in new ways. Imagine telling yourself, I don't have to live the same story anymore. Your old patterns were written during chapters that no longer define you. The person you are today deserves responses shaped by clarity, not past fear, by strength, not survival mode, by intention, not old habits. As this chapter closes, remind yourself that recognizing your patterns is an act of courage. Each moment of awareness loosens the grip of your past and opens the door to a life guided by choice, softness, and genuine strength. Chapter 4. Learning to sit with your emotions. There comes a moment in healing when you realize avoiding your emotions has cost you more than feeling them ever would. Emotions are not the enemy. They are signals, small waves carrying truths your mind hasn't yet put into words. But life teaches you to stay strong, to move forward, to not make things complicated, so you start treating emotions like problems instead of guides. This chapter teaches you the art of sitting with what you feel instead of running from it. Most people fear their emotions because they believe the feeling will last forever. But emotions are temporary. They rise, peak, and soften when given space. Suppression is what makes them heavy. When you push a feeling down, it doesn't disappear. It hides beneath your routines, shaping your reactions quietly. And one day, when you're already tired, it surfaces stronger than before. Begin by noticing the difference between distracting yourself and actually processing. Distraction keeps you busy. Processing keeps you honest. When something hurts, do you scroll, overwork, or pretend it doesn't matter? These are escape routes you created to survive earlier chapters of your life. But now, they stop you from understanding the feelings that need attention. Ask yourself gently, what am I truly feeling right now? Not what you should feel, but what is present. Maybe it's sadness disguised as stress. Maybe fear masked as anger. Maybe exhaustion hidden under silence. Sitting with your emotions means allowing your inner world to speak without shutting it down. Imagine your emotions as visitors knocking at your door. When you ignore them, they knock louder. When you welcome them, they soften. You don't need to agree with them or act on them, just acknowledge them. Sometimes simply naming a feeling reduces its intensity. You create space where the emotion can breathe instead of tighten. There is quiet courage in being still with yourself, in letting the wave rise without resisting, in trusting that you can handle the depth of your own feelings. When you do this, your mind stops fighting your heart, and you start sensing the peace hidden behind the discomfort. This practice also reveals truths you once overlooked. You notice how certain people drain you, how some situations trigger old wounds, how specific memories still echo inside. These realizations don't weaken you, they free you, because you finally understand what your emotions have been trying to communicate for years. Sitting with your emotions is emotional intelligence. It is self-respect. It is healing without force. And the more you practice, the more your emotions transform from overwhelming waves into gentle signals guiding you toward clarity. As you continue learning to sit with your emotions, you begin noticing something powerful. The moment you stop resisting what you feel, the emotion loses its intensity. It becomes softer, clearer, and easier to understand. What once felt overwhelming becomes something you can observe instead of fear. This is the quiet strength of acceptance, strength that doesn't push emotions away, but allows them to move through gently. Many people confuse emotional control with emotional suppression. They believe staying expressionless means being strong, but real control isn't about ignoring your feelings. It's about understanding them enough that they no longer control you silently. When you allow yourself to feel without judgment, your inner world becomes less chaotic. You stop pretending and start living with honesty. Think about moments of anger, not the loud kind, but the silent pressure in your chest. Most of the time this anger is layered with hurt, unmet needs, or boundaries you didn't express. When you sit with it, the anger opens, revealing the softer emotion beneath. This gentle uncovering helps you respond with clarity instead of reacting from pain. The same happens with sadness. When you stop escaping it, sadness shows what mattered to you. It highlights the loss, the value, the part of you longing for care. And fear, when acknowledged, becomes a guide rather than a trap. It warns, teaches, and sometimes protects. Emotions, when understood, become teachers instead of battles. Sitting with your emotions reconnects you with your intuition, the quiet voice beneath the noise. When you stop numbing your feelings, your intuition becomes sharper. You sense when something isn't right, when a situation drains you, when a relationship is misaligned, and when your heart wants change. This inner clarity builds a confidence that doesn't depend on anyone's approval. One of the most transformative parts of this practice is learning to stay with discomfort without rushing to escape it. Discomfort doesn't always mean something is wrong. It often means something inside you is shifting. Growth is rarely smooth. Sometimes it feels tight or uncertain. But when you remain present, the discomfort becomes a doorway to deeper self-understanding. You also begin to see how avoiding emotions affects your relationships. When you can't sit with your own feelings, it becomes difficult to sit with someone else's. But when you learn emotional presence, your connections naturally deepen. You become more patient, more open, and more capable of listening without defensiveness. As this chapter closes, hold one truth close. Emotions are not storms meant to break you. They are signals meant to guide you. When you stop running from them, you learn to walk beside them. And that is where true healing begins. Chapter 5. Rebuilding your inner confidence. Confidence isn't something you wake up with. It's something you rebuild slowly, especially after life has shaken you or made you doubt your own worth. Real confidence isn't loud. It isn't about proving anything. It's a quiet certainty that grows when you begin trusting yourself again. And in this chapter, you start returning to that trust. Confidence breaks in subtle moments. Maybe something you believed in didn't work out. Maybe you gave your heart to someone, or something that ended painfully. Maybe you heard too many critical voices and not enough supportive ones. Or maybe you spent so long adjusting yourself for others that you forgot what it feels like to stand in your own truth. These moments don't make you weak. They just create distance between who you are and who you think you're allowed to be. Begin rebuilding confidence by accepting that your worth has never depended on your mistakes. You are not the chapters that hurt you. Confidence grows when you stop using your past as evidence that you're not capable. It grows when you see your survival as proof of your strength. You've lived through moments others might collapse under. You've carried yourself through days when your heart felt heavy. That alone shows resilience. Notice how often you second-guess yourself. How many times you know what you want, but soften your voice. How many dreams you keep hidden because you fear judgment. These hesitations come from old doubts, not from your ability. Rebuilding confidence means reconnecting with your intuition, the inner voice that knows what feels right for you. Start small. Keep one promise you make to yourself. Speak gently in moments where you usually stay silent. Say yes to something that excites you, even if it scares you. Say no to something that drains you, even if you fear disappointing someone. Each choice sends your mind a message. I trust myself again. Confidence also grows when you allow imperfection. You don't need to be flawless to be worthy. You don't need constant strength to deserve respect. Real confidence understands that you will stumble, hesitate, and take time to grow. The difference is you stop seeing these moments as failure and start seeing them as part of becoming. As this chapter opens, remember, confidence isn't built from external praise. It comes from internal alignment. When your actions match your truth, when your choices reflect your values, when your voice carries honesty, you begin to feel grounded again. This is the beginning of returning to yourself, not as the person shaped by disappointment, but as the person you were always meant to be. As you continue rebuilding your inner confidence, you begin to see that confidence is not a single moment of courage. It's a relationship you develop with yourself. Every small decision, every boundary, every moment of honesty slowly strengthens that relationship. Confidence is built quietly, in the background, through the choices you make when no one is watching. Start by recognizing how often you shrink yourself. You downplay your strengths because you fear appearing arrogant. You stop yourself from trying because you worry about what others might think. These hesitations aren't your truth. They are echoes of old experiences that convinced you to be careful with your potential. But caution becomes a cage when it keeps you from exploring who you truly are. Confidence grows when you stop treating fear as a stop sign and start treating it as information. Fear doesn't always mean danger. Sometimes it simply means you're stepping into unfamiliar territory. And unfamiliar does not mean wrong. When you start understanding your fear instead of running from it, you regain control of your choices. Another step in rebuilding confidence is learning to receive. Many people are comfortable giving support, but uncomfortable accepting it. They dismiss compliments, reject help, or minimize their achievements because they don't feel worthy. But when you allow yourself to receive, even small gestures, you teach your mind that you are deserving. Confidence becomes easier when you stop fighting the good that comes toward you. Pay attention to your internal dialogue. Confidence crumbles under harsh self-talk. The words you use on yourself matter deeply. If you speak to yourself with the same encouragement you offer others, you will feel a shift. Gentleness is not weakness. It is fuel for growth. A mind spoken to with kindness becomes stronger, not softer. Rebuilding confidence also means allowing yourself to start again. Many people hold back because they think they've missed their chance, or they compare their progress to others. But life doesn't operate on a single timeline. You can restart at any age, in any season. Confidence blooms when you stop measuring your pace and start honoring your direction. Think about the moments in your past when you faced something difficult and still found a way through. Those moments are not just memories, they are proof. Proof that you can handle pressure, navigate uncertainty, and rebuild after loss. When you look at your life through this lens, your confidence stops depending on ideal circumstances. It starts depending on your history of resilience. As this chapter closes, remember that rebuilding confidence is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to the person you were before doubt dimmed your voice. You are not learning confidence for the first time. You are remembering it. And with each moment of self-trust, that memory grows stronger. Chapter 6. Protecting your peace and mental space. There comes a time when you realize that peace isn't something you search for outside. It's something you build within. And as you grow, you understand that protecting your peace is not selfish. It's necessary. Without it, your mind becomes crowded, your emotions become heavy, and your inner world fills with things that drain you. This chapter teaches you how to guard your mental space with intention. Peace begins with noticing what quietly exhausts you. Often it's not major events but small, repeated pressures. The conversations that leave you tense, the habits that clutter your thoughts, the people who pull you into their chaos, and the expectations that keep you from resting. These small drains accumulate until your mind feels unsettled without knowing why. Protecting your peace means finally paying attention to these subtle weights. Start by observing how your body reacts in different situations. Notice the tension that appears around certain people, the heaviness that follows particular interactions, the calm that rises in safe spaces. Your body often recognizes the truth long before your mind accepts it. When you trust these signals, you stop forcing yourself into environments that disturb your balance. Peace grows when you choose surroundings that support your emotional well-being. You also protect your peace through boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They are limits that prevent unnecessary emotional harm. You can care deeply for others while refusing to absorb their chaos. You can help without losing yourself. You can listen without carrying every emotion handed to you. Boundaries are acts of self-respect, not separation. Another part of protecting your peace is decluttering your inner world. Many of your thoughts aren't yours. They're old fears, inherited beliefs, or voices you absorbed over time. When you slow down and reflect, you separate your true voice from the noise. This clarity brings a calmness no external comfort can replace. Allow yourself to step away from people who consistently drain your energy. Distance doesn't require conflict. Sometimes your heart simply knows when your presence is being taken for granted. You are allowed to choose peace over pressure, even if others don't understand. Your mental health should never be compromised to maintain a connection. Protecting your peace also means choosing what you mentally consume. Not every conversation deserves your attention. Not every argument needs your reply. Not every thought deserves space in your mind. When you filter what enters your inner world, your emotions stabilize, your decisions sharpen, and your life becomes lighter. As this chapter settles in, remember, peace is not the absence of problems. It is the presence of boundaries, clarity, and emotional honesty. Protecting your peace is not avoidance. It is choosing the life that nurtures you. As you continue learning to protect your peace, you begin to see how much of your inner exhaustion came from giving energy to things that never gave anything back. Peace is not built by withdrawing from life. It's built by choosing what truly deserves space in your mind and heart. And when you make those choices with awareness, something inside you begins to settle. One of the most important parts of protecting your peace is understanding that not every emotional invitation needs your response. People will bring their fears, their frustrations, their drama, and sometimes their unresolved wounds. You can listen with compassion, but you do not have to absorb their chaos. When you stop reacting to everything around you, you learn the value of emotional neutrality, a quiet space inside you that stays steady even when life gets loud. You also begin noticing the difference between situations that demand your energy and situations that simply drain it. Some conversations leave you lighter, others leave you tense. Some environments nourish your mind, others overload it. Protecting your peace means learning to recognize these patterns early. It's not avoidance, it's alignment. You are choosing what supports your growth instead of what stirs your anxiety. Another powerful step is learning to rest without guilt. Many people feel uncomfortable when they're not productive, as if worth is measured by constant output. But peace grows when you allow yourself to pause. Rest is not laziness, it is maintenance. The mind gains clarity when it is not constantly pushed. The heart regains softness when it is not constantly defending. Giving yourself space to breathe is one of the deepest forms of self-respect. You also protect your peace by releasing the need to control everything. Life will have uncertainties. People will change, situations will shift, and plans will sometimes fall apart. When you loosen your grip on control, you reduce the tension inside you. Peace doesn't come from having everything fixed. It comes from trusting that you can handle whatever comes. Forgiveness is another quiet protector of peace. Not forgiveness that excuses hurt, but forgiveness that frees your mind from replaying the same memories over and over. Holding on to resentment locks your energy in the past. Releasing it doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing your peace over your pain. As you reflect on these truths, you begin to understand that peace is something you must cultivate daily. Through small decisions, gentle boundaries, mindful pauses, and honest reflection. When you choose peace consistently, it becomes a natural part of your identity, not just a momentary feeling. As this chapter closes, remind yourself, peace is built internally, protected intentionally, and strengthened through self-awareness. When you guard your inner world, life feels lighter, choices feel clearer, and your mind becomes a place you can finally rest. Chapter 7. Healing your relationship with yourself. Before you can build a strong mindset, you must rebuild the relationship you have with yourself. This relationship shapes everything: your confidence, your choices, your emotional reactions, and even the way you allow others to treat you. Yet for many people, the bond with themselves is the one they neglect the most. This chapter guides you back to a softer, kinder connection with your inner world. Most people don't realize how often they speak to themselves in ways they would never speak to someone they love. You forgive others quickly, but hold your own mistakes for years. You encourage others gently, but criticize yourself harshly. You celebrate others' growth, but downplay your own progress. This quiet imbalance creates an inner conflict that slowly drains your self-worth. Healing begins when you start noticing this pattern. Ask yourself, if I was someone I cared about, would I speak to myself the way I do now? Often the answer is no. You deserve the same understanding you offer others. You deserve compassion, patience, and forgiveness, not because you're perfect, but because you're human. Treating yourself with gentleness does not make you weak. It makes you whole. Healing your relationship with yourself also means recognizing the parts of you you've been avoiding. The insecure part, the tired part, the part that still hurts from old memories. Instead of pushing these pieces away, try acknowledging them. When you give these parts space to be seen, they stop acting out through fear, anger, or self-doubt. They simply needed your attention. Another important step is releasing the version of yourself you think you should be. Many people carry this imaginary image of perfection, always strong, always confident, always in control. But this expectation becomes a heavy burden. You don't need to become perfect to be worthy. You simply need to become honest. Healing starts when you allow yourself to be real instead of ideal. Self-respect is also a key part of healing. It's not just about how you treat yourself, it's about what you stop tolerating. When you respect yourself, you stop settling for situations that drain you. You stop staying silent when something hurts. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You begin making choices that align with your well-being instead of your fears. Healing your relationship with yourself doesn't happen instantly. It's a slow, steady return. It happens in moments when you choose rest instead of pushing through. When you forgive yourself for something old. When you trust your intuition over external pressure. When you speak to yourself kindly on days you feel lost. As this chapter begins, remind yourself that you are not difficult to love. You just haven't been loved by yourself in the way you needed. And now, you're finally learning how. As you continue healing your relationship with yourself, you start realizing that self-connection isn't a final state. It's a daily practice. Some days you feel deeply aligned with who you are, and other days you feel distant or uncertain. Both states are normal. What matters is that you return to yourself with honesty instead of criticism. A powerful part of this healing is honoring your emotional needs instead of pushing them aside. Many people silence their needs because they fear looking demanding or weak. But your needs aren't burdens, they're indicators of balance. When you acknowledge what you require, rest, quiet, reassurance, boundaries, you create an inner environment that feels safe. Your mind reacts less intensely because it finally feels heard. Another step is celebrating yourself without waiting for external approval. You often seek validation from others, hoping someone will confirm your worth. But inner healing starts when you validate your own progress, when you notice the boundaries you created, the courage you showed, the growth you achieved quietly. Celebrating yourself isn't arrogance. It's rebuilding trust with your own heart. Healing also involves addressing your inner critic. That voice that tells you you're not enough, that you're behind, that you should be stronger. It doesn't come from truth. It comes from old wounds and comparisons. You don't need to silence it instantly. You only need to question it. When you ask, "Is this voice speaking truth or fear?" it immediately loses power. A key part of this chapter is reconnecting with the parts of yourself you abandoned along the way. Maybe you let go of dreams for practicality. Maybe you muted your creativity because it wasn't appreciated. Maybe you hid your softness because the world didn't know how to hold it. Healing means inviting these lost parts back. When they return, your inner world becomes fuller and more authentic. Self-forgiveness is equally essential. Holding on to old guilt ties you to versions of yourself you've outgrown. You can't move forward while punishing yourself for moments you didn't know better. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. It frees you from reliving it in your mind. It lets you step into the present with clarity, not regret. As your relationship with yourself strengthens, your choices naturally shift. You choose peace instead of chaos, boundaries instead of people-pleasing, rest instead of burnout, truth instead of pretending. These choices shape your identity gently, day by day. As this chapter closes, remember, healing your relationship with yourself is not about becoming someone new. It's about returning to the person you were before. Fear, doubt, and pressure made you forget your own worth. With every gentle step, you are reclaiming the parts of you that were hidden or silenced, and slowly you're becoming whole again. Chapter 8. Breaking Free from Overthinking. Overthinking is one of the quietest forms of self-drain. It doesn't shout, it doesn't rush, it doesn't appear dramatic. It simply takes your mind and places it in loops. Loops of doubt, loops of fear, loops of what if. And before you even notice, your energy is gone, your clarity is blurred, and your heart feels heavier than the situation deserves. This chapter guides you toward understanding and softening the grip of overthinking. Overthinking often begins in moments where you feel uncertain or unprepared. Instead of trusting yourself, your mind starts replaying conversations, imagining outcomes, and creating scenarios that never happened. You examine every detail as if it holds a hidden threat. You analyze words, reactions, and even silences. But this mental replay doesn't protect you, it exhausts you. The truth is, overthinking is rarely about the present. It is a reaction shaped by past experiences where you felt helpless, misunderstood, or unprotected. Your mind tries to prevent that pain from happening again, so it scans everything for danger. But in trying to protect you, it traps you in a cycle of worry that steals the peace you deserve. Begin by recognizing the moment your thoughts start spiraling. Notice the tightness in your chest, the racing in your mind, the feeling that something is wrong even when nothing has happened. These are signs that your mind is slipping into old patterns. Awareness alone creates a pause, a small space where you can choose a different response. Ask yourself gently, is this a real problem, or is this my fear speaking? Overthinking thrives on imagined situations, not actual facts. When you bring yourself back to what is real, the noise begins to soften. A powerful way to calm overthinking is by grounding yourself in the present. Pay attention to your breath, your surroundings, your physical sensations. Overthinking pulls you into the future or the past. Grounding brings you back to now. And now is usually far calmer than your mind wants you to believe. Another step is accepting that you cannot control everything. Overthinking often comes from the desire to predict outcomes, avoid mistakes, or protect your heart. But life doesn't follow perfect scripts. When you loosen your need for control, your mind naturally relaxes. You begin to trust that you can handle what comes, instead of trying to plan for every possibility. You can also gently challenge your thoughts by asking, has this fear ever truly come true? Most of the time, the answer is no. Your mind creates far more danger than reality ever delivers. As you explore this chapter, remember, overthinking is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of a mind that learned to protect itself too hard. And now, you are learning a gentler way. This is the beginning of freeing your mind from noise and returning to clarity. As you continue understanding your overthinking, you begin to see that the mind isn't trying to harm you. It's trying to protect you with outdated tools. It believes that if it keeps analyzing, keeps preparing, keeps imagining every possible outcome, you will stay safe. But safety built on fear is not safety, it is exhaustion. And breaking free begins with teaching your mind a new way to feel secure. One of the most important steps is learning to notice when your thoughts stop being helpful. Thinking becomes overthinking the moment it no longer leads to action, clarity, or peace. It becomes mental noise, circling the same worry again and again without progress. When you recognize this shift, you can gently guide your mind away from the loop instead of getting lost inside it. A powerful technique is asking yourself, can I do something about this right now? If the answer is yes, take a small step. If the answer is no, remind yourself that worrying will not make the impossible possible. This shifts your mind from fear to practicality. Overthinking thrives in situations where action is absent. The moment you redirect your focus, the spiral weakens. Another aspect of breaking free is accepting that clarity doesn't always come immediately. Many people overthink because they expect every decision to feel perfect before taking it. But life rarely gives perfect certainty. Sometimes you only understand after you move forward. When you give yourself permission to learn through action instead of waiting for flawless clarity, your mental environment becomes lighter. You also begin to understand that you are not your thoughts. Overthinking feels overwhelming because it blurs the line between a thought and the truth. When your mind says, something will go wrong, it feels like a warning instead of a possibility. But when you pause and say, this is just a thought, not a fact, you reclaim your power. The moment you separate who you are from what you think, the intensity of overthinking softens. Another helpful practice is focusing your attention on what is stable in your life. Overthinking amplifies uncertainty, but grounding yourself in what is steady, your values, your strengths, your past resilience, creates inner safety. Your mind becomes less reactive because it remembers it has survived difficulty before. Allow yourself to rest mentally. Overthinking often appears when your brain is overloaded. Silence, stillness, and gentle pauses are not luxuries. They are emotional reset buttons. When you give your mind time to slow down, your thoughts naturally become clearer and kinder. As this chapter closes, hold on to one truth. You don't need to silence every thought. You only need to stop giving unnecessary thoughts the power to define your reality. Overthinking gradually fades when you trust yourself more than you trust your fears. You are learning to let your mind breathe again. And that is one of the purest forms of freedom. Chapter 9. Building Emotional Resilience. Emotional resilience isn't about avoiding pain. It's about learning how to rise through it. It's the quiet strength that helps you breathe through difficult moments, adapt to change, and stay grounded even when life feels uncertain. Resilience doesn't make you unbreakable. It teaches you how to bend without falling apart. And in this chapter, you begin learning how to strengthen this inner muscle. The first truth about resilience is that it grows through experience, not through avoiding challenges. Every difficult moment you've lived has taught you something: how to hold yourself together, how to make choices under pressure, how to rebuild after things fell apart. You may not realize it, but your life is full of small victories where you kept going, even when the situation felt heavier than you could handle. Those moments form the roots of your resilience. Begin by acknowledging these past strengths. Think of times when you felt overwhelmed, but still moved forward. You may not have done it perfectly, but you did enough. Resilience grows when you recognize these efforts instead of dismissing them. When you remember how many storms you've survived, the next one feels less impossible. Resilience also deepens when you allow yourself to feel instead of suppressing everything. Many people believe strength means being unaffected, but real resilience comes from emotional honesty. When you process fear, sadness, or disappointment, you stop those emotions from building into something heavier. Healing happens when feelings move, not when they're trapped. Another part of resilience is flexibility. Life rarely matches your expectations. Plans shift, people change, situations evolve. When you hold too tightly to how things should be, every change feels like a crisis. But when you learn to adapt, to remain yourself even as life rearranges, you create emotional space to adjust without breaking. A powerful way to build resilience is by focusing on what you can control. Overthinking grows where control is missing. But when you shift your attention to small, manageable actions, your attitude, your decisions, your boundaries, you regain strength. Even tiny steps remind you that you are not powerless. Resilience is also strengthened through connection. Sharing your struggles with someone you trust doesn't make you weak. It lifts the emotional weight you aren't meant to carry alone. Support gives your mind space to breathe, which increases your ability to handle hardship. And finally, resilience grows through self-belief. Not perfect confidence, just a quiet truth. You have faced pain before, and you will face the future with the same endurance. This belief doesn't erase difficulty, it gives you courage to stand through it. As this chapter begins, remember, resilience isn't rare. It's built through awareness, honesty, and steady effort. And whether you see it or not, you've already been practicing it for years. As you continue exploring emotional resilience, you begin to see that resilience isn't built in the moment of the storm. It's built in the quiet moments before it. It forms in the way you speak to yourself, in the way you handle discomfort, in the way you rise after small setbacks. Resilience grows long before life tests you, shaped by the gentle habits you practice every day. One of the strongest pillars of resilience is self-regulation, the ability to calm yourself when emotions rise. This doesn't mean suppressing what you feel. It means giving yourself space to breathe before reacting, allowing emotions to flow without letting them take control. When you pause instead of panic, your inner world becomes steady. You respond with clarity instead of fear. Another element of resilience is trusting the process of life. Not everything needs an immediate answer. Not every challenge requires a perfect plan. Some things simply need time, patience, and willingness to stay present. When you trust that understanding will come, your mind stops spiraling. Trust becomes an anchor that keeps you grounded even when circumstances shift. Resilience also grows through reframing your perspective. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" This shift doesn't erase difficulty, but it softens its weight. Challenges become lessons, delays become redirections, disappointments become growth. When you find meaning in your experiences, you stop feeling defeated by them. Emotional flexibility is another essential part. Some days you feel strong, other days fragile. Resilience doesn't demand constant strength. It allows you to experience both without losing yourself. When you accept your emotional changes, you stop fighting your feelings and start supporting them. Connection also strengthens resilience. You don't build it alone. Having even one person who listens without judgment eases the emotional load. Support doesn't remove challenges, but it gives your heart space to recover. And when your heart has space, your strength naturally expands. A helpful daily practice is acknowledging small victories. You handled a tough moment. You set a boundary. You got through a day you didn't feel ready for. These tiny wins matter. They teach your mind that you are capable even on uncertain days. Resilience grows through these repeated reminders. Most importantly, resilience develops when you stop expecting yourself to be perfect, when you allow yourself to rest, to break down, and to rebuild. When you offer yourself kindness in moments of struggle, you don't become resilient by avoiding emotions. You become resilient by meeting them with compassion. As this chapter closes, remember, resilience is not a sudden transformation. It is a lifelong practice shaped by awareness, patience, and gentle strength. And with every mindful step, you are becoming stronger and more grounded than you realize. Chapter 10. Becoming the person you were meant to be. Becoming the person you were meant to be isn't about creating a brand new identity. It's about returning to your truth, the version of you that existed before fear, doubt, pressure, and past experiences shaped your choices. This chapter guides you toward reconnecting with that authentic self, the one who has always lived inside you, waiting for clarity and courage to awaken it. The first step in becoming your true self is recognizing the layers you've collected over time: expectations from family, pressure from society, criticism from others, and the walls you built to survive. These layers often hide who you really are. You start performing instead of living, pleasing instead of expressing, surviving instead of growing. But beneath all those layers, your real self still exists. It has never disappeared. It has only been covered. Begin by noticing what feels natural versus what feels forced. The conversations where you shrink. The choices you make out of fear rather than desire. The dreams you pause because you worry about judgment. These moments reveal the distance between who you are and who you pretend to be. Becoming your true self means closing that distance slowly and gently. Another part of this journey is honoring your values. Your true self is built on what matters to you, not what impresses others. When your actions align with your values, you feel grounded and peaceful. When your actions please others but betray your truth, you feel anxious and disconnected. Returning to yourself means choosing alignment over approval. Authenticity also requires accepting your imperfections. Many people hide their true selves because they fear being judged or misunderstood. But the person you were meant to be is not perfect. It is real. When you embrace your flaws, your strengths shine more naturally. You stop exhausting yourself by pretending to be more or less than you are. Another important step is reconnecting with your inner voice. Over the years, that voice may have grown quiet because you listened more to the world than to yourself, but the guidance you seek outside often already exists inside. Your intuition, your desires, your silent longings, they are all clues. When you finally start listening, life feels less confusing. Becoming your true self also means releasing roles that no longer fit you. Maybe you were always the strong one, the quiet one, the giver, the peacekeeper, or the problem solver. These roles may have served you once, but they are not your identity. You are allowed to outgrow them. As you move deeper into this chapter, remember, becoming who you were meant to be is not a sudden change. It's a gentle unlearning, a return, a strengthening of the truth you abandoned to survive. And with every step toward authenticity, your life begins to feel lighter, clearer, and more aligned than ever before. As you continue stepping into the person you were meant to be, you begin to understand that becoming yourself is not about changing into something new. It's about finally allowing yourself to live without fear. The real you has always been present, quietly waiting beneath the layers you carried for survival. Now, those layers are falling away, one soft truth at a time. A powerful part of this journey is choosing presence over performance. So much of life is spent trying to meet expectations, some spoken, some silent. You try to fit roles, impress people, avoid judgment, and protect yourself from disappointment. But authenticity grows when you stop performing and start living. When your choices come from sincerity, not fear. When your actions come from alignment, not pressure. This shift doesn't just change your behavior, it changes your entire inner world. Another key step is embracing your evolving identity. You are not meant to stay the same. Growth naturally reshapes your priorities, your limits, your desires, and your boundaries. Becoming who you were meant to be means allowing yourself to evolve without guilt. You don't owe anyone the same version of you forever. You only owe yourself the truth of who you are now. A crucial part of this chapter is giving yourself permission to dream again. Over the years, you may have buried dreams because life felt too heavy or complicated. You told yourself, "Not now," and eventually stopped listening to the longings within you. But your real self still remembers what you wanted before life interrupted. And when you reconnect with those dreams, even in small ways, you revive a part of yourself that brings energy, meaning, and direction. You also begin to understand the importance of choosing environments that support your growth. Becoming yourself is harder in places where you feel judged, misunderstood, or restricted. You need spaces that allow honesty, softness, curiosity, and expansion. When you surround yourself with people and environments that respect your truth, your authentic self emerges naturally. Another step is letting go of comparison. Comparing your path to others steals clarity from your own journey. You were never meant to walk the same road as anyone else. Your timing, your growth, your healing, they are unique to you. When you stop measuring your progress through someone else's life, you finally see how far you have actually come. As you move through this final chapter, remind yourself that becoming the person you were meant to be is a lifelong unfolding. Some days you will feel aligned, other days lost. Some days confident, other days uncertain. But as long as you keep choosing honesty, awareness, and self-respect, you remain on the right path. And now, as this audiobook closes, hold on to one simple truth. You were never lost, just hidden beneath the noise. And through every chapter you have gently returned to yourself, with more clarity, strength, and peace than before.